Welcome back to Onward to Victory for episode 14. My name is Colgin Hirschel. Alongside me is Taylor Gautney and Rhiannon Boesl. We got a lot of fun sports in play in this episode. We have hockey, which is going to have a huge series later this week, which I actually don't know if we're going to talk about in this episode, unfortunately. But that being said, we have baseball, which has finally gotten its season started up. Opening day was on Friday. They had 4 games this weekend. We'll have a huge recap of that. ASU Beach Volleyball and many other sports. But let's hop right into it with that beach volleyball team.
Yeah, so the beach volleyball team, they last year had a very historic year. They ended 21-11. They were 5-2 in the conference. They had 11 ranked wins. They ended number 12. They're coming in this year ranked at number 11. And it was just an incredible turnaround for this team. It's going to be really exciting to see them come in, especially playing these new teams. This upcoming week, they start their first tournament. It will be the Outrigger Duke Kahanamoku Classic. I apologize if I had mispronounced that. But every team that they're playing is literally ranked. They have Hawaii on Thursday, UCLA on Thursday, USC, and USC is the reigning champ, and TCU, LMU, and Stanford all coming up this week. So it's going to be a great start to this year, and it's just really exciting to see how this team's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, this beach volleyball team, I'm personally can't say I know a whole lot about the sport. I mean, obviously, it's pretty close to volleyball. I know it's 2-on-2, a little bit of difference.
It's so incredible. It blows me away to see 2 people cover that entire court in sand. It's just so incredibly the concept is kind of the same, but
it's different strategies. Like they hold numbers behind their back, I believe, for what they're gonna do.
They do that in indoor too,
do they?
But it's different in sand because it's more definitely more of a placement type of strategy, and it's just really impressive to watch them play.
Yeah, and head coach Glatfelder in her second year came from GCU last year, had that historic year, won Pac-12 Coach of the Year, and ASU was ranked all season. And there's 2 really great players to be excited about, 2 sophomores, Ava Williamson and Ava Hawley. Ava Williamson, one of the 3rd best in ASU history with a 24-7 record, an AVCA second-team All-American. Of course, moving to the Big 12, I don't really think there's conferences like that in beach volleyball, but, like you said, their schedule coming up, they play 11 of the 15 teams who made the NCAA tournament last year, of course, playing the number 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 12 team this weekend. So lots of opportunity to open up to a strong start and kind of prove why Arizona State is growing in the beach volleyball aspect.
It's kind of hard for Arizona State to be bad at beach volleyball. It's 75 degrees out right now, and I know back home it's real field negatives. So you're not going to see any teams from the Midwest, from the East Coast, having good volleyball teams because they don't have beaches in February. And Arizona State has that luxury. They have that ability to be able to throw out a team and be able to compete with it with all these West Coast teams like USC. It's no surprise that they're good. California is known for their beaches, so.
And, this team is relatively young. I believe that they became a team in 2014. So the way that they've been able to develop, and, Glatfelder, this is her second year at ASU, this being their 3rd head coach since 2014. And just to see the way, the impact that she's made on this team, and ASU being able, like we said, kind of like a younger team, being able to come up so, hard against these teams, especially last year, making their appearance in the tournament. It's just really cool to see and really exciting. They don't have the best history with the teams that they're going to be playing this week, but it's going to be really cool to see how they can start off their season strong.
Yeah, before ASU, head coach Kristen Glatfelder was at GCU, so she just made the switch from valley to valley, going from Grand Canyon University over here to Arizona State. So a little bit of animosity there between the 2 schools potentially if they end up facing off this year.
And GCU right now is ranked 18th in the AVCA preseason poll, and ASU is 11th. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it's just kind of cool to see how coaches can create such great chemistry with their players so quickly like last year was their historic season. We saw this as well with Van Neal in indoor volleyball, and also with like Dillingham. The chemistry that they make is like instant, and I think that's really incredible because I feel like typically that takes a longer time.
Yeah, you mentioned that GCU team. It'll be kind of a smorgasbord of Arizona colleges. It'll be Arizona State versus Grand Canyon in Tucson for the Cactus Classic. So kind of all three of those teams kind of combining for a little bit of matchup. They'll also play Boise State, Stetson, and Oregon in that matchup as well. But it's a Valley sport. It's a West Coast sport. It's no surprise that Arizona State dominates.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we transition from beach volleyball, we'll move over to the Diamond for the opening weekend of Arizona State baseball, a season that has a lot of high hopes comparatively to the other sports that have taken place at Arizona State. ASU Baseball has a lot of high hopes, a lot of new players coming in, and for the first time in a few years, they actually think that they can go far and make the College World Series.
Yeah, they definitely think that this weekend going 3-0, sweeping Ohio State.
4-0 after today.
Yeah, beating Austin PA today. But we're going to focus on the Ohio State series because that was a huge one. They won all three games. The first game was 9-8, second game 7-6, and the third game was 17-10. In the first game, they were down 8-6 going into the bottom of the ninth, but they rallied with the bats and walked it off in the stadium. Kian Vu got started with an RBI single to score Kyle Walker, and then Jacob Tobias scored Kyle Walker again with a sac ground out right back to the pitcher, and it was a really close play at home. The crowd was going crazy. And then finally the walk-off was hit by Josiah Cromwick, and he hit a double over the head of the center fielder, and the Sun Devils won their very first game of the season. And then in the second game, they had another walk-off thanks to Brandon Compton. Brandon Compton, if y'all remember, if y'all are OTV originals, we talked about him and Ben Jacobs being Big 12 preseason first teams. And Compton went 3-4 with 4 RBIs and the game-winning 2 RBI double in the bottom of the ninth. And then, of course, that 17-10 game, Brandon Compton once again had a home run. Josiah Cromwick had a home run as well. And Ohio State had to pitch 11 pitchers, their entire team, just to have a hope of winning. Of course, ASU gave up the 10 runs, but the starting pitcher from Jaden Alba, he got the start that day, and he only gave up 2 earned runs and 3 strikeouts. The bullpen definitely was an issue in that game, and it was last season. That was kind of one of the big storylines coming into this season as well.
Yeah, and speaking on Brandon Compton, he was player of the game for that last one against Ohio State, and he's absolutely incredible. Like you said, you mentioned him before, and he's just living up to those expectations. He was one of the preseason All-American first-team designated hitters, and he had the Golden Spikes Award preseason watch list, and it's just super, like, he's coming out on fire, and this is still so early in the season. It's really great to see, like, how powerful these players can come in and support one another.
Yeah, it was kind of a mystery coming into the final game of that series. Who's going to actually start for the Sun Devils? You had Ben Jacobs go in the first game. I can't remember. Who was in the second game? Do you remember, Taylor?
Jack Martinez.
Jack Martinez, that's right, in the second game. But having that third pitcher come in the series, pitching 3 guys with Jay and Alba pitching in that last one, it was much of a mystery. The first 2 guys were confirmed for the weekend. You had Ben Jacobs as your opening day starter. You had Jack Martinez as your second game starter. But there was a big question mark over that third game against Ohio State. Who's going to start? Who's going to pitch? We'll talk about Ben Jacobs a little bit later. But Jaden Alba coming in, he was okay. I mean, 4 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 errors. Like, it's all right. You'd like to see a little bit better out of a pitcher. I mean, gave up not too many runs, which is good. It was more so of the back end of the team that gave up the majority of the runs, but he was fine. He did his job well. They got the win. And then again, today, against Austin, PA, they started Rohan Leto, who was decent. Or no, sorry, they started Jonah Gilblin against Austin, PA, and they actually went down 3-0 in the fourth to PA, but rallied back, scored 5 unanswered, including a Compton single to center field, which scored 2, and got the win for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, this Sun Devil team, of course, coming in, like you said, had a bunch of high hopes, and starting the season 4-0 against two very good opponents, but coming up it gets a little bit harder. You play Oral Roberts here at home. You're 4-0. You play Oral Roberts, kind of a lesser opponent. You should be able to win those games, but then that UCLA series out there in LA, that's going to be a huge one. UCLA, usually a powerhouse in college baseball, not so much this year. Of course, Jackie Robinson Stadium, one of the most historic college baseball venues, but that's going to be a great series. And Arizona State, I think they start Ben Jacobs game one. They start out strong just like they did against the Buckeyes, but like you said, once you get to that second, third, rotation option, it gets a little bit more slim.
Yeah, so as we look forward into the upcoming series for the baseball team, for the rest of ASU athletics into the weekend, it's a big weekend for ASU athletics. We'll take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that opening day starter of Ben Jacobs. But for now, we have If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys. Welcome back to Onward to Victory as we come back from break. To start off, we're going to talk about Ben Jacobs, the opening day pitcher for the Arizona State Sun Devils against Ohio State. So, Taylor, I know we talked about him a little bit at the beginning of the year of 2025, that is. What do we have on him from then?
Yeah, him and Brandon Copton were both Big 12 all preseason first team. Of course, Ben Jacobs, he's, really highly recruited for the MLB. He could have gone out of high school, decided to go to college, went to UCLA, and really struggled to find playing time there because UCLA had so many pitchers. Just at that year, UCLA was so good, and he just didn't get a lot of opportunity. But, this year and last year, getting that opportunity for Arizona State. He's the number 2 left-handed pitcher for the 2025 MLB draft. He's the 72nd ranked prospect in the entire draft. This guy, his release is so strange because he hides the ball by his left leg, and then when he releases it, he has a little sidearm action. So hitters really struggle to hit against him, and he's just an absolute stud for this baseball team.
Yeah, I feel like I'm honestly astonished by baseball because it's just incredibly hard, especially I think how you were saying, there's rotation of pitchers, and as a hitter, I feel like it'd be so hard to adjust to having those pitchers. And like you said, he has such an interesting throw, and being left-handed, it's just really, I don't know. That's just my random thought. But he was also named the U.S. Collegiate National Team during the summer, and he's the 43rd Sun Devil to accomplish that. So it's just really interesting to see how he can come in and take that lead, especially in the opening game, and be able to adjust with the rotations.
Yeah, in that first game, he pitched 4 innings, 5 hits, 4 runs, 9 ERA with 1 homer allowed. He led this team to a victory. They struggled early on, came back. There was that weird booth review in the first game where the refs or the umps actually went up into the score box to check the call, which I didn't even know that they could do that. That's always something when you're playing sports as a kid. You're like, hey, ref, the game's on being recorded. Just go look at the replay, and they actually did. So, but it was Arizona State who was able to battle back and take the victory against Ohio State. Ben Jacobs performed well in that game. Last season, he was 7-3 with a 4.75 ERA and 66 innings pitched. He only allowed 15 homers, so he was pretty solid. Obviously, coming over from UCLA, where he didn't really get to play a whole lot, didn't do as well in the games that he was able to play last year. He was really good.
Yeah, and this season against Ohio State, he really struggled. He had 5 strikeouts, but gave up 5 hits. And that's really been the thing with him, is he has the potential and he has the pitching arsenal to put out batters. But when he's struggling, he's really struggling. And he was really struggling to locate in that game on Friday. You just saw, balls in the dirt, just stuff that's really unorthodox from him. Of course, last season, you said the stats, he was really good. And he's definitely looking to bounce back. I think he'll pitch. I think they'll rest him for the Oral Roberts series, but really have him kind of have a revenge game out at UCLA.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see him against his former team in UCLA. So I'm looking forward to that series.
Yeah, and also just wondering to see how the team pops out. They, big sweep this weekend, so I think they rally around each other really well. And also ASU introduced a new pitching coach, Jeremy Ricardo, And just seeing how they kind of adjust with the rotations of the pitchers and how Ben Jacobs can adjust and learn from the new coach.
Yeah, I got a chance to speak with him, I think it was 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, before the season started. And he said that he was talking with some of the players and that it was hard for them to hit. They couldn't get a bat on the ball from these pitchers, especially from Ben Jacobs, which he was really looking forward to in the beginning of the season, and obviously it's done well starting off 4-0.
Yeah, and speaking on what Rhiannon said with Jeremy Accardo, he was a AAA pitching coach for the Nashville Sounds, a minor league affiliate of the Brewers, and then he worked his way up, and actually the New York Mets organization became an assistant pitching coach, so he comes here with a lot of experience, an 18-year professional player as a pitcher, and I think if he can develop Ben Jacobs will be the next MLB player to come out of Tempe.
Yeah, so as we move away from the diamond momentarily, we'll go over to an Arizona prospect who we have had in the arsenal for, I think, 3-4 weeks at this point. We just haven't ever gotten around to talking about her, but it's Sydney Anderson. It's a 5'10" shooting guard out of Tucson, Arizona, and I know, Rhiannon, you've been sitting on this one for a while, so why don't you start us off?
Yeah, it's really cool because I feel like women's sports are just they're just getting a lot of recognition now, and it's really great to see, and especially women's basketball. In Arizona, I feel like it's been pretty big. I feel like in high school I would hear about it all the time. Shout out Paradise Valley High School because our team was pretty good. But yeah, Sydney Anderson, she's crazy. She's super good. She's number 1 in 4A right now and number 10 in Arizona for 3 points made. She's committed to GCU, and GCU is doing incredible this year. They're 24-2. They're first in WAC. She's leading the team in points per game, points this season, rebounds, steals. She has 40 assists, 41 field goal percentage, and she's just a powerhouse. She makes shots like crazy, and it's just really great to see. And yeah, and this South Point Catholic team, they're just crushing their competition this year. They have 24-4 right now. They're number 1 in the state, and playoffs are coming up, so it's going to be really cool to see how she can, finish out her career in high school and what she'll bring to the table at GCU.
Yeah, and she's really a two-way weapon. You see the 14.3 points per game, but 47 steals so far in the season. When we wrote this, 47 steals, and in women's basketball, you have to have that lockdown perimeter defense. You're seeing, of course, you had Caitlin Clark last year. A lot more girls are starting to take threes, and we're seeing that a lot in the game of women's basketball. And when you have her out on the perimeter playing that lockdown defense, and she can shoot herself, she can really be a problem for Grand Canyon. Yeah,
she's really aggressive on offense, but really strategic for sure, and it's just really cool. And the people that are coming out of Arizona and just being able to see these athletes, pursue their dream, and, she's able to stay in the Valley, which is really cool too.
Yeah, and especially moving to a team like GCU over maybe Arizona State. I mean, you look at the team this year, they have been interesting, I'll say. Have not performed as expected. They had a lot of hope coming into this season, but just Adair has just not been good. I'll skip past that. But her going to GCU, a smaller school, doesn't have too many D1 sports. I mean, it's big for them.
Well, yeah, GCU, though, they have a crazy fan base. Their games are, I will say, electric and crazy to watch. I know that their basketball atmosphere is just incredible, and anytime that I would go to a volleyball game, it was wild. And even when GCU and ASU played downtown, it was crazy.
It was an electric atmosphere.
Yeah, they have a really great fan base. So GCU I definitely think is a cool place.
Yeah, and you got to think if you're Anderson, if you went to that game, offers from ASU and GCU won 70-59. That might have been the deciding factor for her as well.
Yeah, I mean, you go to a arena like footprint. I mean, it's host of the Suns. I mean, it's a big arena. There was a lot more GCU fans than Arizona State fans for that women's game. I mean, they had to travel a little bit further to get to footprint. I know personally I walked from Gordon Commons, but
nice long road trip.
Yeah, it was about 10 minutes, but for them it's like a good half-hour drive, and to be able to show up for their team. And, I mean, not to discredit the Arizona State fans, but they didn't show up for the women's game, and the score reflected it.
Yeah, and at Holiday Hoops Giving, shout out to my mom who's listening to this. There was a lot of GCU fans in Atlanta, Georgia, too, and that's a lot more than half an hour drive. That's a whole flight across the country. So GCU is for real in men's and women's basketball.
Yeah, it was good to see them perform well. It gives good competition for Arizona State, especially with how their basketball teams have performed this year. Not great. Bobby Hurley probably will be gone after this year. Taylor's given his thoughts on that on the show before. Adair will probably be out of here potentially next year. I mean, I don't know. We might have a couple coaching changes in big sports like basketball. But for this episode of Onward to Victory, we're going to wrap this one up. My name is Colgin Hirschel.
I am Rhiannon Boesl.
And I'm Taylor Gautney.
Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.